Hi, my name is Arya Peruma and welcome to today's webinar. Today I will be going over how to factor polynomials and I will be going over a few variations of these kinds of problems. If you have any questions during this session, feel free to drop them in the chat. With that, let's get started with the first question. So the first question we're going to be doing today is x squared plus x minus 6. So before getting started with these kinds of problems, you first have to be familiar with what a coefficient is. So I'm sure all of you probably know what a coefficient is, but just to refresh your memories, a coefficient is the number value which multiplies with the variable. So for example, if you had x as your variable, the coefficient of x would be 1, as it is the number value which multiplies with x. Similarly, if you had 3x, for example, the coefficient of x here is 3, as 3 times x is x, and 3 being the number value which multiplies with the variable x. If you had, for example, x squared, the coefficient here would be just 1, as 1 is the number value which multiplies with x squared, the variable. And if you had 4x squared, the coefficient here is just simply 4, as it is the number value which multiplies with the variable. So knowing this, we can get started with solving this problem. So the first thing you need to do is think of two numbers that, when multiplied, will be the product of the last term and the coefficient of the first term. So I'll just write that out. So two numbers, when multiplied, equals last term times coefficient of the first term. So in this case, in the case of this problem, the last term is -6, and the coefficient of the first term is simply 1, as it is the number value which multiplies with x squared. So basically, two numbers when multiplied, last term times coefficient of the first term is what you need to find out. So we have last term -6, and coefficient of the first term 1. So -6 times 1 is -6. So you want to find two numbers when multiplied will equal -6. Similarly, you need to get those same two numbers when added will equal the coefficient of the middle term. So middle term here is x, as you can see, and the coefficient of x is 1. So writing this out, so two numbers when added equals the coefficient of middle term. So coefficient of the middle term is 1, as the middle term is x, and the coefficient of x is 1. So we need to find two numbers when added will equal 1 in the case of this question. So now that we have this criteria established, what we next need to do is list the factors of -6, which is basically the product that those two numbers we figure out sooner will be equal to. So let's list the factors of -6. So factors of -6 are 1 and -6, 2 and -3, 3 and -2, and 6 and -1. So as you can see, these are all pairs of numbers which multiply to -6. 1 times -6 is -6, 2 times -3 is -6, 3 times -2 is -6, and 6 times -1 is also -6. So all these pairs of numbers multiply to -6. But remember, we established that in our criteria, we need the two numbers to multiply to -6, but we also need them to add to +1. So we have to figure out which of these pairs add to +1 also. So let's add all of these pairs and figure out which of these add to +1, and those will be our two numbers. So adding these, 1 plus -6 is -5, 2 plus -3 is -1, 3 plus -2 is 1, and 6 plus -1 is 5. So we've added all these and we figured out all the sums. So we know that all these pairs multiply to -6. We have to figure out which one adds to +1. So let's just go over these sums which we just figured out. So 1 plus -6 is -5, and it's not equal to +1, which you wanted the sum to equal to. So therefore, these two numbers, 1 and -6, are not the two numbers we're looking for. So next we have 2 plus -3. They both multiply to -6, but they do not add to +1. So 2 and -3 are not the two numbers we are looking for. Next we have 6 and -1 here. And when we add these, it's equal to +5, which is not what we're looking for. And then last one, 3 plus -2. 3 times -2 is -6, and 3 plus -2 is +1. And this was exactly what we were looking for. We wanted two numbers that when multiplied equals -6, but then when added is +1. So yeah, these are the two numbers, 3 and -2. So two numbers are 3 and -2. So now that we've established these two numbers and we've figured them out, what we now need to do is basically take these two numbers and put them inside the original expression in a way. So what I mean by this is, let's take a look at the original expression, x squared plus x minus 6. So just writing it out, x squared. So now what we're going to do is we're going to write our two numbers as coefficients of x. So the sum of these will equal the original middle term. So as you can see, all I essentially did is take our two numbers, which we figured out, 3 and -2, and put them as coefficients of x. So there's 3 here and -2 here, and we just put them as coefficients of x. So then when we add them, or subtract them in this case, 3x minus 2x is 1x, which is what we have in our original expression. So next, what we can do is take an imaginary line and split it down the middle. Just split this expression we've created into two separate ones. And what we do is, in the next step, we take a look at our first expression we've created. So first one we've created is x squared plus 3x. And what we have to do is factor out the common term in this. The common term here is x. So we're going to be factoring it out. So factoring x out, x times x plus 3 is what we'll get. And then we'll take a look at our second expression here, minus 2x minus 6, and factor out the common here as well. Common here is minus 2, so minus 2, factoring it out, we get this. So x times x plus 3 minus 2 times x plus 3. So now once you've done the step, you will notice that there'll be two brackets, like basically two pairs of brackets, two sets. It's basically the same thing. So as you can see, x plus 3 is repeated twice here. So all you want to do is write that bracket, x plus 3, and then pay attention to the terms which are multiplying with the common bracket x plus 3. So you're going to take this, x times x plus 3 and minus 2 times x plus 3. As you can see, x and minus 2 are multiplying with the common bracket. And you just want to write those in their own separate brackets. So x and minus 2 as they are. And there you have it. This is your final answer to the question x squared plus x minus 6. So to recap, all we did is we took two numbers. We needed to find two numbers that when multiplied equal the last term times the coefficient of the first term. So last term here is -6, and the coefficient of the first term is +1. So -6 times 1 is -6. The two numbers when multiplied is -6. And then we want to get those same two numbers that when added is equal to the coefficient of the middle term. The coefficient of the middle term here is +1. So two numbers when added is +1. And then we just simply listed the factors of the number we wanted those two numbers to multiply to. So we wanted the two number to multiply to -6. So we listed the factors of -6 because factors will give us pairs of numbers which will multiply to -6. And from there, we figured out which of those pairs of numbers also add to +1, which is what we need. And that helps us figure out the two numbers. So by listing the factors and then adding them, we figured out which of them add to +1, 2, and we figured out that 3 and -2 both multiply to -6 and add to +1. So we figured out the two numbers are 3 and -2. So essentially what we did next is we took it into the original expression, and we just wrote x squared as it is, and we wrote the two numbers which we established as coefficients of x, and we just added them to make the original middle term x. So we took them as coefficients, so 3x minus 2x minus 6, and we wrote it like this. And then we split it into two imaginary expressions and factored out the common in both. So first expression we've created is x squared plus 3x, and we factored out x as the common. And then the second one, minus 2x minus 6, and we factored out -2 as the common. So essentially what we did is we figured out that there are actually two common brackets. X plus 3 appears twice. So we just wrote that as it is, and then took a look at the terms which multiplied with x plus 3, the common bracket, and wrote them as they are. So x minus 2 in their own separate bracket. And then we got the answer to this question, x squared plus x minus 6. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something new. Hello, it's Arya Peruma, and welcome to this session where I will be going over the second factoring polynomials question. So the second question I'll be going over is 7b squared plus 15b plus 2. So exact similar idea as the last question. We want to find two numbers which when multiplied will equal the product of the last term and the coefficient of the first term. So I'll just write that out again. Two numbers when multiplied equals last term times coefficient of the first term. So as you can see, in the case of this question, the last term is +2, and the coefficient of the first term, remember, being 7b squared. So coefficient of b squared is 7. So basically, two numbers multiplied is equal to the last term times the coefficient of the first term. So when multiplied is equal to the last term, which is +2, times coefficient of the first term, 7, which is equal to 14. So essentially, two numbers when multiplied will equal 14. So similarly, exactly like last time, you want to find those same two numbers, make sure those same two numbers also add to the coefficient of the middle term. So middle term is 15b, so coefficient of b here is +15. So two numbers when added equals the coefficient of the middle term. And in this case, coefficient of the middle term is 15, as b is a variable and 15 is the number value, which multiplies with the variable b. So exactly like last time, you're going to list the factors of the product we want those two numbers we're going to be figuring out to multiply to. So we want our two numbers to multiply to 14 here. So we're going to be listing the factors of 14 to get like the pairs which will multiply to 14, and from there we'll figure out those two numbers by figuring out which of these will add to +15. So listing the factors of 14. All right, so listing these factors of 14 are 2 and 7. minus 1, minus 14, minus 2, and 7, and 1, and 14. So as you can see, all of these pairs all multiply to positive 14, but as our criteria states, we want them to multiply to positive 14 and add to the coefficient of the middle term, 15. So let's go and add all these and figure out which of these also add to 15. So let's see, 2 plus 7 is 9. 1 plus negative 14 is negative 15. Negative 2 plus 7 is 5. And 1 plus 14 is positive 15. So as you can see, we've figured out all these sums. And let's just go over these. So remember, we want them to multiply to positive 14 and add to 15 too. So let's go over these sums which we've figured out. So 2 plus 7 is 9. This is not 15. It's not 15. The sum is not 15. So 2 and 7 are not the numbers. We have minus 1, minus 14. That's negative 15. Sorry, this is not. And negative 1 minus 14, it's not the numbers. So we have minus 2 plus 7, which is positive 5, which are not the two numbers as the sum is not 15. And finally, we have 1 and 14. So as you can see, the sum is positive 15 and 1 times 14 also equals 14, which is what we wanted the product to equal to. So therefore, the two numbers are 1 and 14. So as you can see, we got our two numbers, and we're going to be doing the exact same thing as we did last time. This being, we're just going to take our two numbers which we've established and put them as coefficients of x in order to create a sum which resonates with the original middle term. So we have 7b squared, that's the first term in our original expression, and we're just going to go ahead and write our two numbers which we figured out as coefficients of the variable b. So as you can see, there's b with a coefficient of 1. So we have b and 14 here as a coefficient of b. And all we essentially did is we've taken these as coefficients of b. And when added, you can see they actually make the original middle term 15b. So taking this, having this in mind, we're just going to be doing the exact same thing as last time by taking two terms and splitting them off. So two terms in one expression we've created and two terms in another expression we've created. And we're going to be factoring out in the next step the common terms in both of these expressions. So first expression we've created 7b squared plus b. The common here is just simply b. So factoring it out, b times 7b plus 1. So as you can see, we factored the common here. And next, we're going to look at 14b plus 2, our second expression, and factor out the common here as well. The common here is just 2, so factoring it out, 2 times 7b plus 1. So here we go. This is our next step. And as you can see, exactly like last time, you will see that there's actually going to be common brackets, a set of common brackets. So 7b plus 1 appears twice here. So all you want to do is take this and write that common bracket in the next step. So 7b plus 1. And then you want to look at the terms which are multiplying with 7b plus 1. And you're going to take a look at them and just write them as they are in their own separate brackets. So b, which is the first term multiplying with the common bracket 7b plus 1, and 2. So b plus 2 as they are. And there you have it. This is your final answer to the question 7b squared plus 15b plus 2. The answer is 7b plus 1 times b plus 2. So just to recap, what we did here is we took two numbers when multiplied will equal the last term times the coefficient of the first term. The last term here being positive 2 and the coefficient of the first term being 7. So when multiplying them, we got 14. So we just figured out that we wanted our two numbers to multiply to 14. And then we wanted to make sure those exact same two numbers added to the coefficient of the middle term. The coefficient of the middle term in this case is positive 15. And we just established this criteria. And then with that, we found the factors of 14, which is, remember, the product we wanted our two numbers to multiply to. So we listed the factors and we found out our potential candidates for our two numbers, as we know that all of these numbers multiply to 14, but we just want to know which of these add to 15 also. So we just added all of these and we figured out that 1 and 14 multiply to 14, but then when you add them, you also get 15. So 1 and 14 satisfied our criteria. So knowing those were our two numbers, we just basically took them and put them inside the original expression and just made them coefficients of the variable b and made sure they made and they added to the original expression here, the original middle term. So set 15b. So b plus 14b is 15b. And as you can see next, we split it into two and we created two expressions and factored out the common in both. So the common in the first one, 7b plus b was b, we factored that out. And then the second one, 14b plus 2, we factored out 2 as the common. And then we found out that these two brackets are actually going to end up being the same, 7b plus 1. 7b plus 1 is repeated twice here. And we just wrote that bracket as it is, that common bracket, and we found out the terms which were multiplying with the common bracket, 7b plus 1, those were b and positive 2, and we wrote them in their own separate bracket. And then we got our final answer, 7b plus 1 times b plus 2. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you learned something new in this webinar.